Hi, this is Evan from the Zen Arcade. You can check out my interview at indiebuddy.com. Well, I suppose we came into being at the end of 2018. Myself and Pete and Ross, who are the other members of the band, we were in another band previously, and we'd done lots of touring around the world. Stripes was the name of the band. We had had a good bit of kind of success doing a kind of a different sort of thing. We've been in that band since we were about, well, we've known each other since we were maybe about 10 or 11 or whatever, and we've been playing since then, but we'd been in a band properly maybe since we were about 14 or 15. And from the age of 16 onwards, maybe we got a lot of attention. We got signed and we toured the world and we released 3 albums, and we had a lot of experience under our belts in that sort of way. But the more that went on, the more that was developing in a set sort of way, and there was a lot of involvement with record companies and external forces, management companies and all that, we had a lot of great times, but we felt like we wanted to branch out and do something that we maybe had more not saying, because we did have say, but it was that we wanted to go in a different direction basically, and do something that represented more what we are about as people now. And so the Stripes called it a day at the end of 2018, and we spent the next 2 years demoing and getting ideas together for another project and thinking about how we'd like to present ourselves. And Pete, who plays guitar in the band and writes most of the songs, he came up with the idea of doing a podcast and a fanzine to go along with it as well, and to create a whole little kind of world around the band. And we just kind of launched ourselves. We went public with it, I suppose, if you like, at the end of 2019, and we did our first gig in December, and then of course the pandemic happened, so that kind of even extended the waiting period or the gestation period of things. But at last we've put out our first single, Don't Say a Word, and it's all kind of steamrolling ahead now, as best we can. Yeah, I think we have, and it's probably as a result of the experience that we got through the Stripes, that we dealt with a lot of people working for the different, as I say, record companies and whatnot, and people working in the music business. We got a lot of experience with how that world works and the different facets of it. And there were times in the Stripes maybe where we felt that we were being put into a corner of the music business, or being not confined, but we were put in an area where we didn't see ourselves fitting in. Yeah, and in order for us to kind of fit in the way that people wanted us to fit in, we'd have to change elements of the band that we thought were crucial. Obviously, direction and how we presented ourselves and all that. So yeah, it's the lessons learned possibly from that time. And there's a lot of influences on this project that we've had for years, and maybe we've considered sort of crucial influences or defining influences that people didn't see, because it didn't manifest itself in the Stripes, because it kind of spanned a broader period of time. So this is kind of a lot of stuff that we have wanted to express at last, kind of going public, I suppose. I think this was one of the first tracks that actually appeared in the context of the band. Pete's a very prolific writer, in a sense that he's a great lyricist, and he's lots of ideas all the time. So at the minute we would say we have an album-ish worth of material, definitely, that we are working on and trying to get really refined. And there's a studio actually in Cavan, in a top secret location in County Cavan, that we have been going to. When the restrictions lifted, when we could go around the place and go around the county, we'd go there and we'd be working away on, could be an album, could be an EP, could be whatever. We're kind of waiting to kind of feel our way with how this track goes and how the world is, how things are panning out. But Don't Say a Word was a very early track that appeared maybe in the first 4 or 5 initial sort of batch. And as we were demoing up, there's certain tracks that you think, oh yeah, this is definitely going to be, this is going to be a single, or this is going to be this and that. And sometimes those tracks fall away. It's something that you previously thought, I can really see this going somewhere. It gets, superseded by other tracks, or you just kind of forget about it, or it loses its charm. But Don't Say a Word, it came about early, and it never did. It always kind of stuck in there, held its own as a track. So we thought, yeah, it's a good introduction to the band, because there's other facets. The more stuff that comes out, I suppose, the other facets of the sound will be revealed. But it's really kind of, it's more of a manifesto of how we like things to be. That piece was just on Pete's demo of it. He just sent us a phone recording of himself playing. He was playing electric guitar unplugged, and he just had that little bit at the start, and he's just then just launched into the song. And sometimes, as I say, you might question things like, oh, will we change that intro? Will we, change the arrangement? Sometimes he'll bring a demo and it'll end up being with the three of us will put our heads together and it'll be kind of radically reconstructed, or there'll be a new section. I might throw in an idea, oh, you could do this, or Ross the singer, he'll have suggestions to make about the arrangement, and that happens. But for some reason that just came out as it was. We just thought, yeah, that's perfect, and it felt kind of cool and a bit funny to have. You think it's going to be a certain way, it sounds a bit, I don't know if it sounds a bit kind of doom laden or a bit, you think it's going to be a certain type of thing, and then for it to launch into the song, for it to just take off, we kind of thought that was a bit kind of funny, and we like a bit of a sort of knowing sort of humor about the songs. So yeah, it just felt like it felt like the right thing to do. But I suppose if it sounds familiar, that's kind of a good thing, I suppose. If you see something, you go, I this reminds me of something, but I can't quite put my finger on it. That's kind of a nice effect, I think, to have. I suppose it varies from song to song, really. Sometimes there might be something, maybe we've discussed something, or you might be aware of a theme that's knocking around in his writing, and you go, oh yeah, that's a point you made in the lyrics, or something that you might say in conversation might come through in a lyric, or some phrase somebody says might appear, if there's a bit of wordplay going on. And I suppose you could look at, don't say word particularly, you could look at a couple of ways. I think on the one hand, he's having a lot of fun with words, which is what he's really good at. And, even in the fanzine that we've launched, he's a real master at wordplay and, language manipulation. So it's kind of an exercise in that, which I think is really good. And then I suppose, like a lot of things, if you want to read a sort of a personal meaning into it, or, think of it, the obvious thing to say, but don't say word, is maybe communication. Maybe it's about not being able to communicate with somebody you want to communicate with, or maybe it's just about having fun with words. You can look at it any way you like, I think. But maybe there's even interpretations me and Ross read into it that are totally wrong. It's we'll have to chat about it. I suppose it all develops very naturally, because it did develop out of just conversations that we have as well. I mean, like, for example, there's a section on the podcast, Sonic Seconds, where it's like, a split second of a song that, of all of the split seconds you could pick in a song full of seconds, why does one little thing make the song for you? And it could be a really inconsequential bit, it could just be whatever. That came about literally from us talking about the Sex Pistols' God Save the Queen. There's one moment, I think it's at the end of the second chorus or first chorus, I can't remember exactly where it is, but the drums do a little like doodle-dum triplet thing, right? And so we often said, oh, that's great, why is that the best bit of the song? For some reason, of all the things that are in it, you go, why is that the drum bit that for millions of other people just, I'm sure, passes them by, but for some people you go, oh yeah, I really locked into that and I really like that. So through conversation, things like that, that's how the topics developed, and it genuinely is the sort of conversations that we would have. And it's nice that you found the humor in it, because that was another thing, I suppose. The part of having more control and having more say in this project and being able to do everything on our own terms, with releases and the podcast and all that, a huge part of that, or a huge thing that we wanted to do, was bring more humor in and more just light-hearted enjoyment, and just kind of be real about it. And when we're being real, we like to try and be funny. Funny, I probably thought we'd be used to it, and I thought it would just kind of be like, oh yeah, okay, that's it, I'm registering that this is out, this is happening, and then we'll move on, and it's great. And we're so jaded and cynical, but actually it turned out to be a great buzz. It turned out to be really exciting, and I think it was because of maybe the fact that it's been 2 years since the end of the Stripes, and so it was such a long gestation period, and obviously it was elongated by various circumstances. And I think as well, without getting into it, without being, whatever, we've all had, like, the whole world has had such a heavy year, you know what I mean? It's been a really challenging time for everyone, huge amount of impossible to list different ways. And so it was a nice thing, the idea that something could come along with a bit of optimism about it, and bring back a bit of a buzz. For us, I think, or for me personally, it brought back a buzz of releasing stuff and all that I had kind of forgotten about, because I thought, as I say, oh, I'd be so used to this and all that. And then in the 2 years since, you kind of, that it kind of drifts away from me, and then it came back in a real sort of like, oh, I really, really enjoyed this. It was great buzz, and the idea of it maybe bringing other people pleasure, the people, the the audience that it finds, whoever wants to listen to it, the idea that it might actually alleviate any heaviness that they're feeling, give them a bit of a buzz or a bit of happiness or whatever, and just enjoy it for what it is, was a nice feeling as well. And it also ended up going to #1 on the Irish download chart, which was mad and great and cool, and we celebrated that. Yeah, definitely, I suppose it factors in the thinking in some way that it's like, we're very fortunate, I suppose, and people who did like the Stripes or do like the Stripes and have followed us over to this or are following our careers or any sort of interest, we really can't take those people for granted, because it really is, obviously they're the people who make the thing what it is, and you have to really appreciate that. And it's fierce good of them to be interested and be invested in that sort of way. And again, maybe in the 2 years in between the Stripes and this, you find yourself maybe going off on trains of thought, and you think, who will like this? Will anybody like this? Or will anybody remember it, or remember us, as in, or will anybody have any follow-up interest, or what's going to happen to it? And we're so grateful for the fact that there is an audience for it, and even just the sort of that sort of groundswell, or the sort of grassroots or whatever of the Stripes fan base, people who kind of held on with interest. And I think I think from some of the things I've seen, people are a bit surprised at the slightly different direction, and then other people maybe who followed it were kind of suspecting we might want to go in this sort of direction or whatever. So it's interesting to see different people's reaction to it. It's good. Well, yeah, hopefully it'll be probably the next release to be in a few months, maybe after Christmas or something like that. And we're hopefully going to try and showcase, as many different facets possibly of the band as we can in future releases, because as I say, there's a very solid through line of influences, and it all kind of is very much coming off the same thing. It's all very much of the same genre or whatever. But the way Don't Say a Word was just it was a sort of kick the doors down, sort of like crash bang wallop type track, just to get everybody used to the idea of the band, and it's nice and short and all that sort of stuff. As a manifesto, as I said earlier. So it's like, maybe the subsequent releases might be more, we'll be trying to bring in different sounds, maybe bring in other sort of dynamics to the tracks. Yeah, well, I suppose the classic sort of thing is to, do whatever it is that you want to do and be true to it, really, and if somebody wants to, like, let's say, if somebody wants to be like a real, alternative, experimental act full of integrity, and do whatever their real artistic sort of leanings bring them to, and be really serious about that, then do that. And if someone else wants to be a pop singer and do like a really mainstream poppy sort of stuff and have that sort of success, do that. Whatever your truest thing, don't pretend to be something you're not either way, you know what I mean? Kind of go for it, really. Whatever you do, sort of go forward in all your beliefs or whatever. But I think and it's very hard, obviously, now with the pandemic and all sorts of stuff has changed so much about how the advice you can give, because obviously the thing would be to gig and then do more gigs once you've done those gigs. So obviously it's hard to do that. But I suppose social media, as I say, we've been very lucky that we've been able to do this in a sort of a gigless world, because we have the other fan base, and people who've come to the band even through social media, new people coming on board. But because we had a career already sort of in motion, we were able to make that jump easier than people who are starting from scratch. So that's a tricky thing to advise, but at the same time, I think through kind of clever sort of, not manipulation of yourself, but like being good at social media, good at posting, and good at engaging with people. I think people want that sort of engagement. Hopefully you can get the word out, and ideally next year there'll be gigs that can be done, and when they can be done, I'd say do as many of them as you can. We very possibly could be doing that. I can't confirm anything at the minute, but we're talking along those lines, and it would be great to do something like that, because As I say, we did one gig. We got two of our friends to fill out the lineup, and we had a 5-piece band, and we did a gig just literally before Christmas, and we had loads more planned this year, obviously, and there was festivals and things like that in the pipeline, but it wasn't to be. But yeah, I'd love to do live streams, and I spend a lot of my time watching bands live streams, and stuff like those KXP radio sessions in America and stuff like that. I'm full time watching them and thinking, oh, I'd love to do something really well filmed and really good. So if we can do it really well, and if we can film it really well and have good sound and all that, I'm the first man to say let's do that. No, absolutely. And yeah, even if something goes wrong in a gig, you can there's enough kind of goodwill in the room, or enough kind of a thing that, you and the audience, you can go, we'll pull through this. And, if there's some sort of breakdown in equipment or whatever, you can kind of carry it off or whatever, or you put a humor about it. Obviously much harder to do when you can't tell, you can't see or hear the people that are looking at you. So it's like a much trickier thing. But yeah, we'll try and work out, as we'll try and get rid of as many kinks as possible before we make any moves towards that, I think. Well, hopefully, if the lockdown lifts here in Ireland at the end of November, we'd like to just get straight back in and do as much recording as possible. As I say, first things first, I'd say would be finishing a follow-up, or finishing the next. We have a couple of tracks earmarked as potential feature singles. We'll probably get those done. And as I say, it's an album's worth of material. So, but whether it manifests itself as an album, or whether it comes out in different forms as the year goes on, we'll have to sort of play that by ear. And it depends on how we plan those things. But that, and there'll be, I think, 2 more podcasts to do, and issues of the fanzine as well, which I think they come out. I'm terrible at remembering when they actually come out, but I know there's it's a Tuesday, Thursday arrangement, but it's all easily found out on social media anyway. But as Pete, as well as masterminding the songs and all sorts of stuff, masterminds the release schedule for those things. But yeah, we're just going to sort of do that, and maybe even just rehearse for any potential live streams that might happen once we can get together again. We did a bit of a gaff thing where there was, I think, the 2 months, there was two came up in the time that we couldn't get together, and we did them over Zoom. But instead of recording them, we sent out a thing to followers of the band to join in on the Zoom call, and we'd all just get together and do it as if it was on, and we made it a bit interactive, and they could all contribute to all the segments. So we picked 3 or 4 of the big topics, the burning issues, and they were able to contribute to those bits. And we had about, I'd say, 30 participants on each podcast, or on each Zoom call, which blew us away. But it also meant that they were about 4 or 5 hours long, because we had to go around to everybody and list their sonic seconds, or an album they want to recommend, or whatever the topics were. But it was brilliant though, because it was actually nice to put faces to names that you might see following the band online, or liking posts or whatever. And it was a huge relief to find out everybody's really nice and great to chat to and all that. So we had a good time. Totally. And it was exactly, and it was as much of a break from the monotony and from the worrying and all the stuff that time brought to us, as it was to them, if you know what I mean. Because we're all sitting home wondering, is everything still the same? If I was to go outside, or if I was to go here, would it still be like it used to be? And then when you actually chat to people and you're like, everything's actually okay, everyone's fine, everyone's normal. It's this external problem makes things feel like things have changed, or things are different, or whatever. But everyone's still themselves, waiting for this time to pass. And once we can figure out a way to do that, it'll be great. I know it's great to have some sort of link to other people. All right, thanks a million.